Everybody joining me next on the show. Me and this guy have done some stuff before, but it was mostly Arkansas-related stuff. But joining me now is Wes Pruett over at 4-Star Sports Media. We're going to be talking the Memphis Tigers football. Of course, they'll be playing the Troy Trojans this Saturday, 11 a.m. on ESPNU. And Wes, I appreciate you coming on and kind of give us some education on Memphis Tigers football.
Phillip, first off, thanks for having me, man. It's always fun to come on and talk ball with you. You have a great content every week on your show. When you look at Memphis, I mean, they're a team that, when you look at them from the 70s and 80s, there's not a lot of sustained success. There was a little bit in the 90s with Chuck Stobart. He had 5 straight years of 6 wins. He won six games the last 2-3 years of his career at Memphis, and then he left. He was let go, and Memphis moved on and did some other things. And then you look, Larry Porter, 2010, 2011, team was terrible. They were 1-11 went 1-11 and then 2-10. Off of that, you hired Justin Fuente. Obviously, everybody knows who that name is. Justin Fuente, at the time, came over from TCU, offensive coordinator, came into Memphis, struggled a little bit first year. Matter of fact, his first loss was to UT Martin in 2012, and that is that's the only loss Memphis has ever had since 1980 against an FCS program. So when you look at, of course, then Norvell comes in, and now you've got Ryan Silverfield, who came off a 10-win season last year, knocking off Iowa State in the Liberty Bowl, and expectations are very, very high for this 2024 season.
Yeah, like I said, 10-win team last year, went 6-2 in the conference, preseason. Everybody, I mean, look at a lot at the magazines, media day, all that stuff. Memphis is looked at as the number 1 team there. And just talking about, Ryan, Silverfield coming in, you mentioned replace Mike Norvell, who not having a good start right now for Florida State, which they'll meet each other next week after Memphis plays Troy. But what has he done in your eyes? Help building this program, kind of continue what Mike Norvell was doing when he was there, and just kind of raising the bar there at Memphis.
I mean, I think the first thing he's done is he's kept, obviously continuity is very important in college football, as you know. He was hired literally right before the Cotton Bowl, 2019. The team was very excited, and they've continued to show their excitement every year. He's now entering his 5th season. If you look at the job he's done, not only in the recruiting, but if you look at the job he's done through the transfer portal, it's been incredible work. You look at the roster at Memphis right now. You've got Tennessee's leading tackler from last season. You've got South Carolina's leading rusher from last season, and Mario Anderson. Elijah Herring is the linebacker I'm referring to with Tennessee. And then you bring in guys. I mean, you've got Seth Hennigan, starts and stops there with the offense. He is the only 4-year starter in the country to start every season for the same institution. That stat alone speaks volumes for what Ryan Silverfield's been able to do.
Yeah, speaking of quarterback, Seth Hennigan, and then last year's threw for over 3,800 yards, 32 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions, and completion percentage goes 67%. For people out there, Troy people, people here in Dothan are not familiar with Memphis and Seth Hennigan. What kind of quarterback is he?
One word, cerebral. He is, man, he's got that it factor, Phillip, and I know that's everybody uses that cliche, but he does. He's got that factor to him. You go back and look at the North Texas game last year. Memphis had their back against the wall, was getting ready to lose that football game. Seth Hennigan said, not today. I will lead this team to a win. And that's exactly what he did. You go back and look at the Iowa State game. Just how he's able to lead this football team. But more than that, he's a leader off the field. He's a leader in the locker room. He's a leader on the practice field. When you talk to him in post-game press conferences and pre-game press conferences, he exudes confidence not only in himself but in this program. And it means the world to him to be the Memphis quarterback. And I think that's very important in today's college athletics is he wants to be at Memphis. He's the career all-time passing leader at Memphis, and he's going to continue to break records this year.
And looking at, obviously, open against North Alabama, wins 40-0. And it's kind of like I was telling somebody, I'll give an example, too. I was telling people, co-workers and just friends, everybody said, well, with Auburn beating Alabama A&M, 73-3, and I think it probably could have led the same thing with Memphis beating North Alabama 40-0. You know the team who's going to win the game. All right, the team that's the most talented team, they're going to win the game, but it's kind of like how you want them to look. Do they look clean? Does defense make good plays? Lack of penalties, no turnovers, stuff like that. When you look at Memphis's 40-0 win over North Alabama to kick off this season, what was the big thing for you that you took away from that performance?
I mean, one of the big things is Sutton Smith goes down first quarter. Of course, Sutton Smith, star running back out of Georgia, came in as a freshman 3 seasons ago. That's a big thing right now. He was getting an MRI done today on the knee. Not exactly sure exactly what it is. Could be better, than some may have expected. But, I think when you look at that game, obviously 40-0. I'll be brutally honest. I think Memphis could have scored many more points on them. But I think when you look at the defense, Jordan Hankins led defense. They're flying around. They're having fun playing the game of football. And they had 3 turnovers against North Alabama to continue another streak for Memphis. I think this now goes back to I think we're at 27, 28 games consecutive where Memphis has had a defensive turnover, as well as they've now scored over 21 points in 28 consecutive games, which is the longest in the nation.
Yeah, and offensively, they were the best team in the AAC last season. Of course, we talked about Seth Hennigan. He was good in the game, 308, 2 touchdowns. You mentioned Sutton Smith, and of course, Mario Anderson coming in at running back, looking to replace Blake Watson. How would you say the running game looked there for Memphis?
Oh, I think Mario Anderson runs with a lot of passion, a lot of purpose behind the pads, if that makes any sense. He keeps his legs moving, and we've seen it. We saw Memphis have their first 1,000-yard rusher last year in the last 4 or 5 years. I think you'll see it again this year. I had predicted preseason we would see 2 with Mario Anderson and Sutton Smith. Now, with Sutton going down, that may alter a little bit, but I think the running game is really good. One thing with Memphis that a lot of people are forgetting is they're replacing 3 guys on the offensive line. You bring in Trent Holler for center. From Marshall, you bring in a couple other guys, Jaden Nichols from South Carolina, tackle, and some others. But you've got a rebuilt and retooled offensive line, and that's what Ryan Silverfield is at the end of the day. He's an offensive line coach that he wants to run the football. And I think you saw, looking at the stats, you don't see the numbers that you would expect to see against the North Alabama, but I think watching the game and really diving into the film, you see it's there. It's just you just got to break them here and there.
And defensively, that was an area that Memphis struggled at last year, especially through the air. Had some issues there. Overall, last season gave up close to 29 points per game and 432 yards total. But again, it seemed like the passing game, especially the second half of the year, was a struggle. And I know it's North Alabama, and that's what people say. But still, watching the game, and you mentioned they were flying around and it created some turnovers. Any other things you saw in the game against North Alabama that gives you confidence that this Michigan defense can really take that next step up for this season and be much better than they were last?
Yeah, in the trenches. I think when you look at the front 2 levels of that defense, from the defensive line to the linebackers, those 2 levels of that defense are going to be key for Memphis this year and really coming into this game. You look at Troy, defensively, Troy's forced 191 turnovers since the start of the 2016 season. It's tied for Clemson with most in the nation. But then you look at them, and they have a talented running game. Damian Taylor rushed 11 times, 103 yards, had a touchdown, had 9.4 yards per carry last week against Nevada. That's something that Memphis defense has got to get ready for, especially the rest of the season. You got Troy, and you got a bye week, and then you play Florida State. You got Troy, then you go down and play Florida State, who comes off a bye. Then you go play another team who runs the ball really well in Navy, who also comes off a bye. So I think with this week with Troy, defensively, I think you've got to limit the speed of Troy, and there's a lot of speed, as you know, on that Troy football team.
Yeah, so let's jump into the matchup. Of course, I was telling people that Troy's matchup with Nevada was big. For one, you want to start 1-0. And then the fact is what they had behind it. You go into Memphis, who Memphis does not lose very often at home. And then also you got to go to Iowa. Iowa's not an offensive juggernaut by any means, but still you're going to Iowa. So I was fearful Troy losing against Nevada, they could look at an 0-3 start. They lost to Nevada, so we're going to see what it's going to be all about. And just looking at some stuff, I saw Memphis was like a 17-point favorite, over under 54.5. You mentioned the Troy speed from what you've seen out of the Trojans. What else about this matchup is kind of key to you for Memphis to come out on top?
I mean, you gotta start fast. You can't start slow if you're Memphis, offensively and defensively. I mean, if Troy does happen to take the ball first, you need to get a stop. You got to make sure you score first. When Memphis scores first, they're very, very, very good under Ryan Silverfield. When Memphis scores first, they're 14-13 over Ryan Silverfield, or under Ryan. I'm sorry. When they score first, they're 18-7 under Ryan Silverfield. When the opponent scores first, they are 14-13 on the season. The other thing that's very important is you've got to make sure that you hold the opponent, 20 points or less. 20 points or less, they're 13-0 under Ryan Silverfield. Now, do I think Troy's not going to score more than 13 points? No, I think Troy scores more than 13, which I think is the challenge for Memphis, is that you're going to have a team, like I said earlier this week, the level of competition between North Alabama and Troy for Memphis fans is going to be very evident very quickly. You can't take this team lightly. You can't look forward to Mike Norvell, as you were talking about earlier. You can't look forward to Florida State. If you do, Troy's going to beat you.
Yeah, and it would be very easy right now for Memphis to do so. You say, okay, Troy lost to Nevada. We think we're better. We know we're better than them. And then we're looking at Florida State. That could be a big win for us. I mean, they're struggling right now, obviously. You kind of be looking at y'all. It's okay, we could get a win against a Power 4 program. But, looking at Troy, too, and watching the game Saturday, obviously a lot of new starters. Jared Parker, John Summerall obviously is gone after winning back-to-back Sun Belt championships. So Troy is a very different team than what they were last year when they won that title. Goose Crowder, I think in his first start, was solid. He was 20 of 30, 201, one touchdown. Obviously, the favorite target on this team is Devontae Ross. He had over 100 yards in the game. And they did run the ball well, which that was a question for a lot of people around Troy. Is like, okay, Kamani Vidal, you can argue the best running back Troy has ever had. Now with the Chargers, how do you replace him? Well, Damian Taylor, and you mentioned it, had 103 yards. Gerald Green, transfer from East Carolina, he had 40, 190 altogether. So when you look at the Memphis defense, what do you think is the best form of attack against the Troy offense?
I mean, as hard as it is to do this, you got to contain their speed. I mean, you look at Goose; he's one of, I think, 6 players I read on the roster that have all tapped top 20 miles an hour running. I think Goose came in at like 19 miles an hour. That's fast. That's fast. That's quick, and that's something that you can't really simulate unless you have guys that are that fast. Now, does Memphis? They've got a couple, but when you look at it, I mean, I think home field advantage is huge for Memphis, especially in the non-conference. Memphis is 27-1 in the last 28 home games against non-conference opponents. During that stretch, obviously, they made Mississippi State in 2021, Ole Miss in 2019, and 2015, and UCLA in 2017. The lone loss came to UTSA, who's now a conference member. But when you look at it, you've got to control the game. That starts up front. You've got to limit, as hard as this is going to be, you've got to limit Troy in big plays. If you go back and look last week, Phillip, I'm pretty sure they had 6, 7 big chunk plays. That's runs of 15, 20 yards or more, passes of more than 20. That you got to limit that. I mean, Memphis did not see that against North Alabama, and that's a concern of mine. Is that they're going to get punched in the mouth a little bit, and that they may not know how to respond.
And to defensively, Troy, and that was something with John Summerall over the last couple of years. The Troy defense not only was one of the best in the Sun Belt, they were just one of the best in the country, especially getting after quarterback when you had guys like Richard Jubinor and Javon Solomon. And that was kind of my concern with Troy coming into this year. I thought they have some good defensive players, some players with talent, but the pass rush, that was something that just, especially in the Sun Belt, teams had to worry about Troy because they had 2 of them that was going to get after you. And then last week against Nevada, now Nevada really wasn't able to take advantage of the new Troy secondary. I wouldn't say inexperienced, but just new players there. But they were able to run the ball. 214 yards on the ground, 6.3 average yards per carry. Their running back, Savion Reed, had 135. So, kind of what I asked you with the Memphis defense. We all know what Memphis has, the 3 receivers that came back for this year, quarterback Steph Hennigan. If you're Memphis, I'm going to put offense coordinator hat on you, Wes. If you're Memphis, do you attack Troy with the run game or do you attack it with your passing game?
I think you have to do it with both, to be honest with you. I think, without the run game, I don't think the passing game is nearly as effective as it would be. Because, then you spin your ears back and let the quarterback. I think Anthony Lamphere, tight end. I think Brennan Doole, tight end, are going to be 2 guys that are going to be really, really utilized this week by this Memphis offense. I think that you can get you talked about it. You've got major weapons on the outside. Rock Taylor, Demir Plumsey, Kobe Drake. Also, Marcelo Bussey had a big game last week against North Alabama. He's a guy that's really coming into his own. And there's others that are there as well. Jacoby Banks came from Houston. But those 2 tight ends I just talked about, Anthony Lamphere and Brennan Doole, are 2 guys. You see a lot more of the 2 tight end set for Memphis, which is not something you've really seen recently. It's because those 2 guys are really talented, both at the blocking and at the receiving level, as they both scored a touchdown against North Alabama. So I think when you look at it offensively, yes, we know about the weapons on the outside. You've got to utilize the running game. It's going to be by committee. We know that it's going to be by committee. But you've got to utilize your tight ends, because that's, as you know, that middle of the field is an area that can be attacked if it's open.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's an interesting matchup. I was happy to see it. I'm always happy when the Troy Trojans are going to be on actually national television outside of the Sun Belt, stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. Even though I'm here in Dothan, we're near Troy, I kind of feel like Memphis is going to win the game. I'm pretty sure you feel the same way.
Yes, I do. I think Memphis wins. Is it a blowout like against North Alabama? No, I don't think it is. I think we see a very similar game to what we saw with Nevada. And we talked to Gerald Parker yesterday on the Sun Belt press call, and he spoke about it. He said, Memphis presents a lot of challenges. And to Memphis fans, they may not understand this. Gerald Parker is very, very, very familiar with this program. He was on the Marshall staff back in the day. He was on the 2019 Penn State staff as a wide receivers coach and quarterbacks coach. He also worked with Jordan Hankins, defense coordinator at Memphis, back at UT Martin back in 2017, 2018. So he's very familiar with not only the program, the history of the program, the talent on the program, the challenges of the program, but he understands that this is going to be a fight for not only Memphis but for Troy as well.
Yes, so it will be a fun game. Looking forward to it. Wes, before I let you go, tell everybody about 4-Star Sports Media and where they can follow you.
Yeah, man, thank you. We've been doing it for about 4 years now. We cover Memphis Tigers, Arkansas Razorbacks Hockey Club. We cover SEC, ACC, Sun Belt. We got articles. We got podcasts. Right now we've got 6 shows going a week, which is almost a show a day, which is pretty good. But you can head over to 4star.live. That's our website where we wrangle all of our content there. And then also you can follow us on all of our social medias at the number 4 and then Star Sports M. That's where you can find us on X or Twitter. I still call it Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, where we stream live whenever we do a show.
All right, sounds good. If you want to keep up with what's going on in Memphis or Wes, just check it out over at 4-Star Sports Media. And Wes, again, I appreciate the time and look forward to talking to you again sometime down the road.
Yes, sir. Anytime, Phil. Thanks, man.